Hello, welcome. Welcome all. Just give it a couple minutes here for folks to join. My name is Rachel Lighty, and let's see. This is FutureFeed training session number 1. I am working on one screen here, so let's see. Can you guys see FutureFeed right now? Yeah, okay, good. And can I just get confirmation from someone that you can hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear.
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's get started then. So like I said, my name is Rachel Lighty. I'm the Director of Compliance Education here at FutureFeed, and I lead the training sessions. This is training session number 1 for service providers. I will recommend that if you have not yet done so, to sit through the end user training. So here I'm showing FutureFeed, and when I log into FutureFeed anywhere, any page, if I scroll down to the bottom, there's 2 links. There's this first link here. That's where you click to register for training, and I'm sure you recognize this page as you've been here before. So here's today's session, training 1. And what I'm recommending is that you do sit through the end user training sessions 1 and 2. In here, I go through basic, capabilities of the tool and, using the tool. So everyone, whether you're a service provider or end user, everyone needs to learn how to use the tool. And that's where I cover that type of information in the end user training. In today's session, we're gonna talk more about the offerings or add-ons, functions that FutureFeed provides that helps our service providers with managing, multiple compliance packages. And so, that's what we're going to cover today. More training or educational resources that you have available to you. If you click on this second link for the 15 minutes with FutureFeed, click on that registration link. And here is where you can register for a meeting series. It's a weekly meeting. So you just have to register once, and then the meeting will be on your calendar every week. And it's open office hours with someone at FutureFeed. Most of the time it's me, but if I'm out traveling or out on vacation, someone else will stand in. But it's every week available, open office hours with me or someone at FutureFeed. So if throughout the week, as you start using FutureFeed and, working in FutureFeed, if throughout the week you have any questions or issues and you can't find the answers, with what you have available to you, join that meetings session and you can ask it there. So we often talk about, things related to FutureFeed, how to do something in FutureFeed, or what's the best way to do something in FutureFeed. But then also we do end up talking about just CMMC and the regulations and the requirements in general. So that's a weekly Thursday session. And that's how you sign up for it right there. So other resources you have available to you is all throughout FutureFeed. In the interface, we have these getting started guides built in. So here I'm in the working documents section of FutureFeed. Let me go onto the policy page. If I show you, this is now policy information. What is a policy? Why do policies matter? What kind of policies you should log into FutureFeed? If I go over here under tools and maybe go under vulnerabilities, now I'm showing you under the getting started guide vulnerability information. why log vulnerabilities, how to log vulnerabilities. Here's information about tools and services. Okay, here's if you click on on-prem, then you can see what does on-prem mean. So these getting started guides here, it's different. Every page, every sub page, every area you're in FutureFeed, those getting started guides will be populated with the data that you need to know that relates to the page you're in. So look there for answers or some guidance if you need to. Another resource you have is in the top right of the corner under user settings. We have a help center. So over here, make sure you're logged in. Let me close out of that one and that one. So make sure you're logged in. See here, I'm logged in. When you do first come to this website every day, you're going to be logged out. You'll have to sign in. You'll have to create yourself an account when you first visit this website, but it's just a website. It's a FutureFeed website, and it's where we house all of our knowledge base, articles, videos, how-tos, user guides, all that stuff. So go in here and look for questions here as well. All right, and then the last place you can go for questions or support is, of course, our help center or our, submitting a ticket to us. And to do that, just email support@futurefeed.co. Okay. All right, so like I said, well, let's see. Where's my window? Okay, we still got 2 folks in here. So, have either of you sat through the end user training?
I did part 1, yes.
Okay, good. Good.
I have not, but I will get
Okay.
scheduled to do those at some point here.
All right. Well, if, I say something today that isn't very clear, just let me know. I'm happy to elaborate on anything. But definitely recommend going and sitting in that. So today I want to talk to you about, well, first we're going to talk about the template subscription. So here I'm showing you that in when I log into FutureFeed, I see these 6 different company packages. So I'm assuming you guys are service providers. You're in the service provider training. So if you don't have any CMMC clients now, but you do in the future, eventually you'll have, every one of your clients that you're using FutureFeed with or for, they're going to have their own environment. Each one of your clients will have their own environment because each one of these environments is producing one system security plan, one system POAM. Okay. So it's one compliance boundary. It's one assessment scope. And a template subscription is essentially a blank environment that you fill out and, populate. Let me click into this one. So let's pretend that this is the template subscription environment. So in here, you would fill out, anything that when you bring on a client, let's say, you find more work and you bring on another client. And then when you set up their FutureFeed environment, you could copy or clone this templated environment. And then when they first log into their environment, it will be pre-filled out with, any of that data that you wanted them to have right from the get-go. So, for example, if, you guys are service providers, let's say, for example, you do consulting services, but also you do vulnerability scanning services for those clients. And so maybe under the assess area, oops, let me go to a 171 control set. So under this assess area, I would go into the vulnerability scanning requirement here and fill out the summary notes or the objective statements down here with statements and status of your vulnerability related to your vulnerability scanning services. Okay. So, for example, this first objective, the frequency to scan for vulnerabilities is defined. So, that's typically this specific objective is typically owned and completed by your client. Typically, they're the one to define, specific parameters for the requirements, like frequencies of scanning and specific policy settings, right? So your client will be responsible for defining objective A. However, you may have like a templated statement, right? So in here, you could go and write up a templated implementation narrative. So you could say the frequency to scan for vulnerabilities in organizational systems and applications is defined as, and then frequency um per document. Okay. So maybe along with your vulnerability scanning services, you have a service level agreement document. So we'll put that here. Let's say you have a service level agreement document that says, you work with that client and you guys fill out that service level agreement to define specifics related to the services, like frequency of vulnerability scanning, or who to report to when you have vulnerability scan findings, that type of stuff. And so here, maybe you have a templated implementation narrative. So every one of your clients that you bring on board, when they get access to their environment, this is what it says already. And then you would just ask them to go in there and fill out this frequency, or maybe fill out the document, or you would work with them to help them define that, and then you fill it out for them. But so we could say annually, right? Oh, wait, no, not vulnerability scans. That's terrible. You don't want to do an annual vulnerability scan. We'll say weekly. I forgot what requirement we're working with. So here, the frequency to scan for vulnerabilities in the systems and applications defined as weekly per SLA. So that's what you could have templated in your client's environment. Um, for this objective B, vulnerability scans are performed. Well, you guys are the service provider and you are providing that vulnerability scanning services. So you would know what that process is and what tools you're using and what teams are performing those vulnerability scans, who they report to, all that stuff. So in here, you could have another templated statement. This objective is implemented by your company, and provide whatever details you want to provide. Every client, would have these details. So make sure it's applicable to, every client, because this is the template environment. And so please see the latest customer responsibility, shared responsibility matrix that your company provides. Okay. So that's just for example. In this template subscription, and let me kind of wrap this up, is what our template subscription is the ability you would purchase a blank environment and name it template subscription or cloning subscription, whatever you want. And then you would go into it and you would fill out anything that you want all of your clients to have already filled out in their environment right off the bat. So you would probably fill out inheritance for yourself, any inheritance or, any requirements that are being met by your company. You would go in and mark them met, and you would provide implementation method details. Also under the requirements, so going back into that risk or vulnerability scan requirement. So under here, there's a place for you to identify personnel responsible for this requirement. Well, if your company is doing the vulnerability scanning, then they're responsible for, they should be identified in here under responsible. And so you could go in here and identify your MSSP team. Maybe you have right here, MSSP support team, or, you know, incident response team, or maybe you have a MSSP vulnerability scanning team, right? But you could go in here and pre-fill out the teams and also get them linked to the different requirements. And so when your clients first log into their FutureFeed environment that you set up for them, it's going to have data in it. It's some of these requirements are already going to be filled out. So they're going to have, some of them are already going to have a met status because your guys' company is doing that for them, and you guys know you guys are compliant. You'll have teams and roles built out, the people who they're going to be interfacing with at your company, and documentation. This is a big one. Okay. Under the documents section, under reference documents, there's a category for CRM documentation. This is customer responsibility matrix documentation. So if your company, if you're a service provider company and you're providing services to your clients that are helping them meet NIST 800-171 requirements, then that's what is being referred to as inheritance, or more appropriately, it should be referred to as shared responsibility matrix, customer responsibility matrix. So if you are providing services that help your clients meet the requirements, it is required. You have to have a CRM. You will have to have a CRM to that will define the delineation of responsibility. So using the example of vulnerability scanning, if you're doing vulnerability scanning for your client, you will have a customer responsibility matrix that identifies your vulnerability scanning services, provides some detail on those services, and then it will identify the requirements that are being met by those services. For example, it would identify 311.2. It would identify the 311.2 requirement, which is the one to scan for vulnerabilities. And then, so under this one requirement, it would be considered a overall shared control, because your customers have some responsibility with implementing and meeting the requirement. And then you yourselves have some responsibility with implementing and meeting their requirement on their behalf. And so you will have to have a CRM document, and where you would house that then is over here under documents. You could upload it under this CRM category and go ahead and create your guys' company by hitting the add new item. Let's say my company is Cyber Sage. So here's the MSP and here's their CRM. Add it. This would be your guys' information, right? You'd be adding and logging and creating a record for your company's CRM. And then you'd go find it here and open it up. And then I would personally attach the latest and greatest CRM here. I wouldn't want to use a live document because I won't want my customers. I don't want my customers to be modifying CRM narrative, especially when it comes to like inherit statements related to my services and what's being provided to them and how they're meeting the requirements. I wouldn't want my clients to be modifying those statements. So I would attach the current version, or you can link to it. So if you click on the ellipses and go over here, there's a insert edit link icon, this chain link icon. You could put a link, maybe if you have your CRM on your company's website or intranet or something, SharePoint, you could put a link there where your clients can get a hold of the latest and greatest. So, I mean, there's a lot you can do in this template subscription. Just related to like not only inheritance or customer responsibility matrix data like that, you know, any of that information related to services or shared responsibility, that can all go in here. But also then think of like your consulting services separate, not your vulnerability scanning services, your consulting services. So what are I did consulting, CMMC consulting, prior to working with FutureFeed, for almost a couple years, and it's what am I trying to say? I had a lot of clients, and it was hard to keep the data accurate, but also I found myself, and I'm sure you guys can agree to this. I found myself repeating the same questions for every client. A good example is that vulnerability scan. The first objective was to define the frequency of vulnerability scans. So I'm sure every client you bring on board, you ask them in some way what they want to define as vulnerability scanning frequency. Or, you probably ask all the clients, who's their C-suite, what's their what personnel or roles should be involved in this compliance project. What I'm sure you ask everyone the type of assets they have and where they're storing, processing, or transmitting CUI. I'm sure you ask everyone to upload a hardware software listing or upload some maybe contract data, right? So there's questions, there's deliverables that are repeated because you ask them to every client, because you need to get that information for every client. So set up your template environment to support that effort, your consulting effort, in a way that it's going to reduce the amount of communication and repetitive communication that you're going to have to do for every client. And to do that, I would personally leverage like the task feature, as well as the discussion feature and the poem feature. So I'll show you in tasks. Let's see. What's a good example? Let's go to a document. Let's go to my procedure. Let's go to this vulnerability scanning procedure, because I'm just going to keep using this whole vulnerability scanning scenario. So pretend I am a service provider and I'm performing vulnerability scanning. And for my company, for the employees at my company who are doing vulnerability scanning, I developed these vulnerability scanning procedures. So that way, every client we do vulnerability scanning for, it's done the same way, and it's done in a compliant manner, and it meets the requirements. So I created these procedures. I'm assuming if you were doing vulnerability scanning for your clients, you too would also have some documentation about vulnerability scanning process, reporting, remediation, all that stuff. So what I'm getting at is in your template environment, of course you would add this document, the vulnerability scanning procedure document or whatever other document. So that way every one of your clients already have that document as evidence in their environment. But then go in here and set up the tasks to, ignore everything that we have here. But let's say I'm building out a template environment for my company. So in here, I would maybe say define the scanning frequency. Uh, Please, remember you're communicating to a client, because this task, eventually my goal is to create all that communication that I have to repeat for every client. I'm going to try to turn it into a task. And then when I create my client's FutureFeed environment, I'll log into that environment and then quickly assign all these tasks to that client. So for here, I'm going to be, please define the frequency of vuln scanning. Wow, we recommend. So, okay, you know, there's your request. That's your question. This right here in this note section, in this title section, this is what you're repeating and you're having to repeat to every client. And this is the information that you're having to collect from every client. Think about, I know we're not in 800-171 Rev 3 right now, but I'm sure you guys have seen NIST, 800-171-3. In 800-171 Rev 3, there's these things called parameters, organization defined parameters, ODP. So for example, let's go to a really easy control here. Now this is a NIST 800-171 Rev 3 requirement, but I'm just trying to use this as an example. So this says that for 315, you have to allow only authorized system access for users, blah, blah, blah. And you have to authorize access to, oh, I lost my mouse. Hold on, my mouse disappeared. I think my mouse died. Okay. Mouse. So they have to define, your clients have to define the security functions that need to have access authorized. And they need to define the security relevant information that should have access control to and need people to, you know, request and authorize access to that information. So these are parameters. And even though NIST 800-171 Rev 2 does not have organization defined parameters spelled out exactly like this, like in the NIST verbiage, it doesn't say ODP, but they are there. And it's all of the define requirements. It's all the objectives that say something needs to be defined or identified or specified. And so all I'm showing you is that all those questions or all those parameters that every client of yours is going to need to define, turn them into a task. Make sure to be very clear on that task and write it in a way that any client of yours can read and understand. So I would put effort into these tasks because this is what every one of your client is going to see as, in the future, because you're going to use this template environment to create their environment. So they're going to see these tasks, they're going to read these tasks, and they're going to have to do these tasks. So be clear, create your task, and then don't worry about assigning it to someone, or better yet, what I would do if I were using FutureFeed for managing compliance for multiple people, is I would go into my template environment and I would define some roles that I could use for every one of my clients. So, maybe OSC lead, OSC information owner, or no, not information owner, because the DoD will be the information owner, but OSC information system owner, OSC security officer, OSC system administrator. So build out the roles to be generic enough that no matter who you're working with, even though they may not have that role like defined and used in their company, the responsibilities for that type of role are, in the company somewhere. Like everybody has a system admin, either at their company or they're paying someone to be the system admin, but someone's going to be doing system admin. So I'd define like the system admin like that. And so then in my tasks, in my document task or my tools tasks here, I would then, I'm not going to read through this all, but for example purpose, in my assignment, I would go and find the system admin here. So notice now I've created this task to define a frequency, right? And I'm going to assign it to the system administrator because typically, from my experience of consulting, and here I'm just pretending to be like you guys are going to know what's better. But typically, when I'm talking about defining a vulnerability scanning frequency, I'm usually speaking to like a system admin or someone in a security role. And so get it assigned like that. And you could set due dates far out, that kind of stuff. Don't worry, because you can always change due dates later. So that's not super important. But then hit submit. And now you have this built out task right here, vulnerability scanning procedure. Here it was defined, and it's currently not assigned, but it's there. And now let's say I'm bringing on board a new client. My internal process will be that I submit a request to FutureFeed and ask them to clone my template environment and rename it to this new client. And then I would go log into their environment. Of course, you're going to have to get them access to their environment. So you'll set them up with access and get them access to their environment, but then go over to the manage roles and go down to that role, those roles that you have already assigned to tasks, and get them assigned to whoever. So let's say I just set up this environment, and now I'm speaking to the client and I'm like, hey, who's going to define for me the vulnerability scanning frequency? And they say, oh, my system admin, Nate is. So in here, I'll go in and I'll assign this to Nate. And now Nate, when he logs into FutureFeed, just by making him this role, he's going to have a bunch of tasks assigned to him. Because I would have gone into all of my documents and all of my tools, and I would have created tasks related to anything technical, and then assigned it to that system administrator, knowing that when I engage with a new client, all I got to do is just assign that person to that role, and now they have a whole bunch of tasks. And maybe they also have a whole, you could even go into the controls and assign, like this 318 here. 318 is a very technical control. It's, I would bet money that if I randomly went to a company and I said, hey, who's implementing 318? They're going to be like, oh, that's our administrator. Administrator is going to be in the word, like in their role title somewhere, right? This is technical. It's a system configuration setting. So under here, you can even go under the interview section and go make the system admin responsible, or a team responsible. So that way, when you just switch out, all you got to do is go over here and manage who's who's either assigned to that role, manage who's assigned to that role, or manage who's assigned to the team and who's part of the team. All right. So you could pre-build out, for example, this HR team here. Every client of yours is probably going to have an HR team or someone doing HR stuff. It doesn't matter if they don't call it the HR team or they call it something else. But then when you clone their environment, you can just go in here and quickly add all of their HR people that you know of, the people that are going to be doing that work, add them to the team, right? And now that individual, when they log in, they're going to see everything, all of those responsibilities, POAM items, tasks that are for HR personnel. So maybe you create a couple tasks that talk about, just questioning, when do you guys do training? What training tool do you use? Do you have a training program? Do you have a training document? All of those questions that you ask everybody, try to turn them into tasks. So that way, it's going to eliminate the amount of time that you end up having to spend, communicating with every client. You're going to be able to handle more clients and have a higher client workload because you're one, you don't forget to ask things because they're part of your template subscription, so you know they're going to be asked. And not only are they going to be asked, but that response and the activity of asking and collecting that response is going to be tracked in FutureFeed, which for service providers is pretty essential because, I mean, it never really happened to me, but I've heard of it where, is a client fails an assessment and they say, oh well, that's not our fault, our service providers doing vulnerability scanning, they were supposed to do that. um it avoids the whole finger pointing, because now you can be like, actually no, look in future feed, we asked you to define the frequency and you defined it as this, and here's exactly the task that we asked that question under. And here was your response, and here was the evidence. So, wow. I really do you guys have any questions? Are you grasping what I'm getting with this template environment?
Yeah, completely. It's a great feature. That's going to take a little bit of playing around with to kind of internalize it, but
For
totally
sure.
I like the way it works. Yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, then we have 20 more minutes, and let me show you the next what it's the last thing I want to show you guys as service providers. It's called our document library, and this is free, no for service providers. The template subscription, I believe there's a cost to that. I'm not sure of the cost, so just reach out to support@futurefeed.co, and if you need a template subscription, you'll get one. Um, and it may be a cost, but this document library, this thing that I'm about to show you, this is free, so there's no cost with this, and I would strongly recommend exploring its capabilities for you guys. If you want to use it, just again email support@futurefeed.co and say, hey, I'm interested in using the document library feature. Okay, so let me show you quickly what that is. First, I'm going to show you the user interface of it. This is going to be how your clients access your document library. So when they log into their FutureFeed environment and they go under documents, there's a couple different ways you can get here, but I'll just show you the main. So under documents, you go to populate. This populate button, this is where you want to, you could quickly build out documents using templates. Okay. You may have already been here. So as FutureFeed users, everybody who's a FutureFeed user, including you guys, you have access to our FutureFeed templates. There's 57 of them. That's what we have listed down here. So what you guys can do as partners of FutureFeed, you could have your own document library or package. So instead of it saying FutureFeed templates, it would say whatever your company is, documentation toolkit or documentation package, template package, name it whatever you want. But that's how they will get access to your documents, or any of the documents that you put in your document library. This is how they get access to them. And then they can view them. All right. And so this is very helpful, especially for our service providers who have their own security documentation templates, which I'm finding is pretty common. So if you guys, like, for example, if you guys have like an access control policy or a vulnerability scanning policy or procedure that you work with every client to fill out, you would put those templates up here. So that way, when you're working with a client, they can access them at any time. But also, not every client is going to need the same set of documentation. Maybe you're working with one client and they have an incident response plan already, but then you bring on another client and they don't have an incident response plan. So not every client is going to need access to every one of your templates. So this is a way that they can browse your templates and only use or only select the ones that they want to or they need to help them meet the requirements. And so to select the document, they can either copy or link to it. So copy means, for this first one, this change control board meeting agenda and checklist. If I copy it, what I'm doing is I'm creating a local copy of that document, and then it's mine forever. I can edit it, make changes to it, whatever. When you link to it, so when I link to a document, what that means is I just have a version of that master in my environment. And so this change control board meeting document, if you guys wanted to go in and update your master template that you use for every one of your clients, if you wanted to go update it, you could go update that document, and then any one of your clients that have linked to that document, they will get those updates in their version that's in their FutureFeed environment. So we could test that out, and I'll show you more about that in a second. But they can either, pull a copy down, edit it, and then also you can pull in here, you can edit the document, but it is also going to end up being edited by your service provider or the document library owner if they do end up editing that master template. And then what this is, these connected controls is, so I'm actually the one who uploaded this document here. I recently uploaded this agenda checklist for change control process. And well, let me show you. It's just like a form to review changes and security impact, and is it approved? What's there any risk impact? All that stuff. Typical change control process data points to capture, right? So if you use this form, if for clients who end up using this form, it's going to help them meet these 4 requirements here, which is in the CM family, for managing changes. In here, it says request, approve, and track changes. Well, I'm doing that through this form. Also, it says to analyze the impact of changes. Okay, well, I do that and I capture that analysis and determination in that form. And if there's any access needed for that change, I'm going to document that access request and any access restrictions or controls in that form. Okay, so if they use the form and they fill it out entirely, then it's helping them meet these 4 requirements. And so if a client decides to use this document and they copy it down or they link it down, whatever have you, it's now going to be found in the agenda section because it's an agenda. So there's the item. Actually, it's this one here because it's connected to these 4 controls. And so now when I open it, there's the document, and over in the connect, you'll see it's connected to those 4 controls. So if I go to the 344 requirement security impact analysis, if I go over here under 344, this requires me to analyze the security impact of changes prior to implementing them in production. And if I scroll down to examine where I have my documents, I will see now that change control board meeting agenda. Okay. So that's what your clients are going to see. Now, how you manage it is you're going to get you'll get access to the document library administrative interface. So let me get to mine really quick for FutureFeed. Where is it? Okay, here it is. Well, this isn't the right one. Let's see. Okay, this is the Tonka Tech. You see up here in my URL, it says Tonka Tech Library. That's fine. I can use this one. So if I go over in my actual library and I show you guys, let me go show you under populate. So here it is. This is that Tonka Tech library that I'm showing you, the administrative interface. Right now I have 4 documents in there publicly available. well, 4 total, and there's 1 publicly available. So if I go over to that, here's my 4 documents. So there's 1 procedure, 3 policies, and then there's that a couple others, but some are published and some are not. But here's what you're seeing on my end. These are all those documents. And of course, you can categorize them. So CRM, if as you guys as service providers, if I would use the document library add-on capability, and this is where I would personally house my customer responsibility matrix. So I'm going to just quickly show you the kind of the capability here, and then apply it to like any document. But you would log, and so let's say my company is Cyber Sage, right? And I'm going to log my CRM, put it in the CRM category. I'm going to hit create. And now currently it's not published. There's no versions. Versions are blank. Now I would have to click on the versions. I'm going to create version, 1.0, create. It does keep revision history for you as well. But so now to edit, here's where you would either copy and paste, your CRM, or you could develop it in here, but let's just put a table in here, and we'll put that 311 to, we'll say it's a shared control, right? And you got some other reasoning in here. Wow. All right. So there's my CRM. It's automatically saving. But now when I go back to here, it's still not published, but now there's 1 version. If I click in it, there's version 1. I can view the version here or change it, or if it looks good, I can publish it. So now I just published my CRM, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go tag my CRM. So anywhere there's requirements with shared responsibility, or there's some inheritance, I would go tag all of those controls where there's either full, inheritance or partial inheritance, like shared responsibility or full responsibility. So tag those. All right. And then what I can do is this required universal. I'm just showing you a couple of the features. So right now I'm in my environment right here. And here's my Tonka Tech library. And let's go to my CRM section over here. And right now you could see there's no CRM for that company I just created. But if I go over here and I make it required universal, what I'm about to do is that for every client of mine that I've enrolled or given access to this document library, because you can control that. Maybe you're working with a client and you're just doing a gap assessment with them, so they don't need access to all of your document templates or stuff, so you won't give them access, but you'll control who does have access to these documents. And then now I'm basically making a requirement. I'm going to say confirm. So here's all my clients that I currently push that out to. And if I go back over here and I refresh my CRM page, I should now have that. Here it is, that Cyber Sage CRM. Okay, and if I open it up, there's the table I created. Okay, but you notice now it's just view. They can't edit this, and that's because I made it over here. Oh, where am I? Over here. I made it. I'm able to control if it's editable or not. Okay, so in this document library, not only are you going to be able to push down templates to your clients where they then could, edit them and tailor them and make them their own, but you can also just push out like just evidence, read only evidence to your clients, like that CRM, or maybe you have an SSP, or maybe if you are doing those vulnerability scan, this would be a way that you could also push out the vulnerability scanning procedure document to all your clients, but view only, because they don't need to edit that, because that's your procedure and not theirs, right? So you can control a lot here, and it also controls the different requirements. All of these documents are linked to, so you're controlling the body of evidence for your clients as well. Also in this document library, if I scroll down, we have summary notes here. Okay, so what this is where you can control the different, you can control some stuff at the requirement level. So here it's listing out all of the 800-171 requirements. Let's go to that 311-1, 311-2. So let's add a statement here. Because every one of my clients, so here, let's pretend that, you know, I'm doing vulnerability scanning. And so here's where I'm going to make that templated vulnerability scan implementation method. Company, this is your client now, company, they hire my company, Cyber Sage Consulting, for to perform bone scanning, bone scanning processes, and let's see, parameters are defined in the SLA for that customer or client, or, you know, template, whatever you say here, every client is going to get. This is also, and so, yeah, there's a lot you can do here, but I'll just leave it at that. Let me hit publish, okay? Close out of that. And now I can push it to my clients. So I can like control who I want to push it to. I'll just push it to me. So I'm going to push that update to me. Now I'll show you what your clients would see. If I go into that 311 control over here, 311-2, right here, you see the summary notes? You see that's what I just typed up? So you could develop templated summary notes for all 110 requirements. And I'm sure if you've done this a while, when I was writing system security plans and writing up, like when I address the requirements, I've been doing it so long that now, like, I address, like, the way I would write up 311 for myself in my company is the exact same way I would write up 311 for your company or another company. Like, I kind of like just templated them all, and I address them all a similar way. And so I'm sure you'll find yourself doing some repetitive narration or narrative development. And so you can template all those, all right? And then the last thing I want to show you is, and by the way, your clients can now go edit this, right? They could still edit it. It's not like you're locking it down for them. They could edit this if they wanted to. So there would be only like templated narratives, because your clients could expand on them, edit them, what have you. You know, every client's not going to be the exact same implementation. So the last thing I want to show you in this document library is the guidance. Okay. So same area here where I pushed out the summary notes is we have this guidance area. And what you can do is you can create, this is a place for you to display your company's specific guidance for that requirement. And so let's go do that 311-1 and add some guidance. So maybe for every client you have the same guidance, you know, bone scans are this, report to this team by doing this, right? All this general guidance. It can be specific guidance to like how you guys implement the requirements in general, or it can be guidance about the requirements themselves, like how to understand the requirement. Or this could be also a place where you list out all those parameters that need to get defined. You could use this however you want, but let me publish that. And where you see that, where your clients will end up seeing that now is I'm still in that 311-2 control. And let me go, well, first I'm gonna have to refresh. There's this guidance book. You see over here, I'm over here on the right side, there's this little guidance book. So I'm gonna click on that, and now I have, everybody has these first 4 tabs, and then there's my Tonka Tech specific guidance here. And that's where you would find any guidance that you put here. Any guidance that you put here, it's going to add 1 tab to the guidance book here, and it will display specific guidance for that requirement. Okay. And that's all I wanted to cover today, is just that template subscription, being able to build out like a good compliance package, a templated compliance package that then you can clone for every one of your clients. And then further controlling, managing and controlling documentation and implementation summary and guidance for your clients this way. All right. I'm going to stop sharing. Does anyone have any questions?
No,
Yeah, no questions, but
good
thank you so
features.
much for walking us through these.
Yeah, you're welcome. So just reach out to support@futurefeed.co if you're interested in getting started on either one of those 2 features.
So I had a quick question. Mike already did the first part of the end user training. I haven't. Would it make more sense before going to the part 2 of this training to go back and do the end user training? Or like to kind of sandwich them, or go through and finish the MSP part and then go back to the
Yes.
end user? Okay, do it that way.
Yes, 100%. I actually probably going to be removing the service provider session number 2 registration link for a while, just because I'm trying to revamp the training. And right now, I really just use that second session to kind of like just add, the time for
Any questions?
yeah,
Yeah, like in office hours. Okay.
yeah. So
Okay, got it.
right.
I'll finish through the series and then start the end user after.
all right. Well, thank you all for your time, and hope you have a good afternoon.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.